So my name is Vivian Walman-Randall, and I am an undergrad at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I've completed my project entitled Her Nature, Exploring Modes of Nature Writing Through the Female Perspective, and I just sort of wanted to talk about it and share, my results and kind of my takeaways. My research question for this project is, what is it about the rhetoric of the natural world that appeals to some women writers, and what do they communicate through this mode of writing? And I was kind of interested in this because I feel that we typically go from the very Western, white cis male view of nature writing and view of nature in general, and then kind of reverse analyze the women who operate within the same sort of genre from that basis, but I kind of wanted to flip the narrative and instead start with the women and start with those voices and see what their baseline is, and maybe think about understanding like literary nature writing or nature in general from that kind of mode. So I basically, for the purpose of this project, chose a survey of 4 different women. I selected Dorothy Wordsworth, who was operating around the early 1800s. She mainly did journal writings, did not write for publication. I also selected Edna St. Vincent Millay, who I think is also interesting because she's not generally talked about as a nature writer. She's more sort of analyzed for her political stances, her personal life, her sexuality. But I really wanted to see, those things are important parts of her identity, but so was the fact that she chose to write about nature, and how did those facets of her identity, how did she sort of even communicate those through natural rhetoric? Leslie Marmon Silko is an amazing writer. She's very inspired by her Mexican, Laguna Pueblo, and Anglo-American backgrounds and sort of integrates those identities into her work. She is well known as a nature writer. And then I also selected Camille T. Dungy, who is an amazing poet, currently active now, as is Leslie Marmon Silko. And she works a lot on including people of color into the conversation and anthologization of nature writers. So these are kind of the people I chose. And, as I worked through this project, I realized that I was really understanding these concepts through this theory of ecofeminism, which is kind of this intersectional way of looking at environmental problems and feminist and gender issues that sees the environment and women's oppression as interconnected. Basically, my results were that in all of these women's writing, there's this almost, I call it spiritual engagement with nature that really resists viewing nature as commodifiable or material or object even, because we talk a lot about the objectification of women, but I think there's also an objectification of nature, and those two things kind of go hand in hand. And all 4 of these women seem to actively push against that idea and emphasize these spiritual or personal, emotional connections with the natural world, with their own physical bodies, with their physical bodies as a part of the natural world. And Leslie Marmon Silko even goes so far as to kind of show this conflict between her male characters who seem to see nature, although they appreciate it, it's commodifiable, it's material, it's something they can make money off of. It's something they can exploit, and they see themselves sort of as owners, whereas her female characters really feel a part of, they feel immersed, and the more that they immerse themselves, the more that they sort of come to nature as its own individual entity, the more that they are sort of brought into this spiritual almost world. And so I kind of took this ecofeminist reading of how, reading women's nature writing is really important because it does give us a different way to look at gender issues and to look at the natural world. We don't have to start with that basis of materiality, of objectification, but we can instead start with almost a spiritual or personal appreciation and integration with the natural world around us and build from there. And coming from that standpoint curates much more respect, much more understanding and empathizing with both women and the natural world, and seeing human, not just women, but just human, as a part of Earth's systems. So that's what I studied, and it was a really amazing experience, and I hope that it was a little bit informative for you. Thank you so much.